Hi, everybody. Becky Rocco. And I have a question for you. Can we just go back to the way it was? I mean, how can we get back to normal? I'm not sure if you've been hearing this question a lot, but I know I have. I want to start here with a poem by Robert Frost entitled Nothing Gold Can Stay. It said, Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue gold, her early leaves a flower, but only so an hour, then leaf subsides to leaf. So evening sank to grief. So dawn goes down today. Nothing gold can stay. It's been about 2.5 years since the pandemic started, and I still hear murmurs, people wanting to go back to the way it was. The change has been happening since the dawn of time. And in 1963, John F. Kennedy, the then incumbent president, said this: change is the law of life, and those who look only to the past or to the present are certain to miss the future. You think about that. The scripture that I'd like to talk to you about and share with you today is John 12:24, where Jesus says, Verily, verily, I tell you, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, it only remains a single seed. But if it dies, it produces many seeds. In this chapter of John, Jesus is predicting and preparing the apostles for his imminent demise, at least from the bodily, the human side of him. He's trying to get them ready for change, and that change is coming. Charles Stoner, the co-founder of Unity, said this in his book, The Ministries of John. He said, to the higher conscience, it seems like a death of an ideal, but it's only a temporary submergence, which has its resurrection in a great increase of life and power. That is the multiplying. That is the growing more and unfolding bigger. Change happens all around us. People want to hold on to the old, and I understand the psychology around that. It makes them feel safe. It makes them feel secure because it's the same routine day in and day out. What we are not looking at is that change is always happening. Nature shows us this change. I'm a master gardener. I recognize it a lot. But you don't have to be a master gardener to recognize change. The change in the temperature, the change of the season, the change of the soil, the change of the humidity, the change of the wind, the shifting tide in and out all day long. Life is about change. And we can just sit back and accept it, whatever happens, or we can put some intention into the change, intentionality, and change it to where the way we want it to change. In the Buddhist philosophy, change is also known as the first Dharma seal. And this philosophy says that the law is the law of impermanence, and that everything in material or relative existence is impermanent. Just look at our lives. We're born as infants. We're helpless. We need someone to take care of us. We can't even hold our heads up at first, right? We can't fend for ourselves. Do we want to stay that way? Do we want to go into boss babies like the kids' cartoon? Or do we want to mature? Do we want to change into what we want? And do we want to unfold not only physically, but consciously and spiritually? By opening our hearts and opening our minds, we can continue to change in positive ways, hopefully until the day that we die. I had the honor of seeing the Dalai Lama many years ago at a convention, and I remember him saying something that at the time really hit me. He said that we need to learn and we need to grow, and that even if he knew tomorrow he would die, he would learn something today. He would still continue to learn. That's putting that intention behind it. We are part of the one power, one presence. We can use this with intention and use the change to become and to live into the expansion of who we are, expanding like heaven, metaphysically interpreted. Heaven is expansion, it's growth. And this is where we want to be in our lives as true students. I have another quote for you by Hercules. He's a Greek philosopher. He says, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river, and he's not the same man." I love this quote. I'm a hiker, so I like it. But it makes me think about the path that we walk. Every step we take, we can never take that step again because we are not who we were before. How do we prove this, right? Even our bodies are not the same. Did you know that every day our body sheds and replaces over 330 billion cells? That's 1% of our actual body every day is replenished. Our cells are recycling all the time. Our skin, our outer layer, changes every 2 to 4 weeks. Our hair, every 6 years for women, and I believe it's 4 years for a man. Our stomach and intestine, typically 5 days. That's how quickly it regenerates. Our liver, every 150 to 500 days. And our bones are the ones that are slower. Can take up to full 10 years to regenerate and replace the bones that we have. Eric Butterworth speaks about living. He talks about meeting change. He says the one real certainty in life is change. Because of our desire for stability and security, sometimes we resist and become anxious during changing conditions. What we spoke about earlier, right? We need to be prayerfully built into our consciousness the realization that the eternal God is thy dwelling place, and that underneath are the everlasting arms. The eternal God is our dwelling place, and underneath are the everlasting arms, resting in the arms of God. So do you get anxious when change comes up in your life? Could you breathe into that statement? The eternal God is thy dwelling place, and underneath is the everlasting arms. Well, we've been through a lot of change in my life, as I'm sure you have too. One such big changes for me was in 2018 when I had a rollover car crash where I went over off the side of the road. I passed out from low blood pressure, and I wound up smashing the roof of an SUV. And because of the car accident and my injuries, I wound up in the hospital for a long time, and I was in a neck brace for 6 months. From my belly button to my ears, I wore a brace. It was one step below a halo, which is where they wanted to put me in, but they had to replace my entire neck, all mechanical now. The change came about, though, after the injury started to heal. And I started becoming aware because during the accident, I had a traumatic brain injury. So executive functioning was difficult for me at the time. As I started coming into awareness of truth principles, and I was healing and praying and living my life the way I needed to, I started realizing there were some things that weren't happening in my life that I wanted to happen. I made a change. I told my husband that the kids and I were moving to California because I wanted to be closer to my family. I felt like this was important to me. My father was still alive at the time. My sister lived in California. And I really believed that this is where I was being led. A change would let me heal. We moved here, and within 6 months, my father died, and my sister, about 6 months later, moved away. But in the meantime, I've had found this little church, a Unity Church, of course, and become quite attached to people there. I walked into one group one night, and there was a lady there that was in the ministerial program. And she started talking about how she was taking all these classes. And the last time I checked, you had to actually go to the summit, to headquarters, to be a minister, to get a ministerial education. And I found out that too had changed. So I started poking around on it. And I started taking classes. And then I'd send in my application so that I too could be on the path. That changed my life forever. Ephesians 3, or you go turn, by the Beatles, 1965, talks about change. There's a time for everything, right? There's a season for every activity under heaven, time to be born, a time to die, time to plant, a time to uproot, so a time to kill, a time to heal, time to tear down, and a time to build, a time to weep, a time to laugh, time to mourn, and a time to dance, time to scatter stones, and a time to gather them, time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing, let go, a time to search, and a time to give up, a time to keep, and a time to throw away, time to tear, and a time to mend, time to be silent, and a time to speak, a time to love, and a time to hate, a time for war, and a time for peace. These are all changing. It's easy to see change inward, and yet so often we don't want to look for them. So let's take a minute and think about what change feels like in our body. What goes on? What makes us uncomfortable? So I invite you to just relax into your seat and get comfortable. I don't want you to change a thing. Just be the observer of your breath. You can close your eyes or hold a soft gaze, whichever you like. Just observe your breath in and out, in and out. In, you're breathing in the light and the love, and out, you're releasing the light and the love. With every breath, we are changing. With every breath, we are growing. With every thought, we are understanding. And we are becoming who we were meant to be. As you sit in these few moments, I want to read to you an affirmation and a reflection from Butterworth's essay I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to say the affirmation first, and I just want you to repeat it to yourself silently. I do not resist change, for I know that only God, the good, governs me, my circumstances, and my environment. Read that in. I'll say it one more time. I do not resist change, for I know that only God, the good, governs me, my circumstance, and my environment. He asks us to reflect. God gives me the wisdom and strength to meet the inevitable changes that occur in my life. I meet them easily and lovingly. I may not see how changes can be a blessing, but I keep my thoughts loving, positive, and fearless. Not only has God prepared the way for me, He has prepared me, readied me to meet each phase of life as it unfolds before me. His Spirit fills me with the faith to know that all my affairs are working together for good. All my affairs are working together for good. So as you begin to come back and open your eyes to the space and time, just breathe that in. The Spirit fills me with the faith to know that all my affairs are working together for good. Hercules is a French philosopher. He had this to say: to exist is to change. To change is to mature. To mature is to go on creating oneself endlessly. Can we begin to view change as something natural and easy in our lives, letting go of the thoughts of opposition and stepping into opportunity to grow and to be our best and highest self? How can we, without change, with vigor and fearlessness? First, remember the only true normal is on the drier setting, and that you are unique expression of God. Change is easy and just loving, and you are here on this adventure you call life to become where you are called to be. Step into the change. Honestly.